Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano. It's the 3rd of July, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So kicking off today, we have some kind of fresh ETH ETF news, but not really. This is kind of a nothing burger, but I figured I'd mention it anyway. So Nate here, who you guys know I've been following for quite a while now with regards to the ETH ETFs, thinks that the amendments are going to be due on July 8th, so the S1 amendments that we've all been waiting for, potential final S1s by July 12th, which would theoretically mean a launch week of July 15th. So it's seeming like it's a mid-July launch at this point, but really I think we're all guessing. I mean, this has been such an annoying thing. Like I've mentioned this before, but this has been so annoying. It's this drag on, I guess, not the market, but just like on mindshare around this, where I look at this and I wake up, check the news and see this news, and I'm like, oh, okay, more like non-news for the ETH ETF. Like it kind of feels like they were approved a lifetime ago at this point, and I just want them to start trading at this point. I think everyone does. And it's just been a little bit frustrating to see how long this process takes. Obviously, TradFi moves a lot slower, but this, I think, is more just not people, but like the SEC maybe, or I guess just general feet dragging here. I don't know. It just seems very, very slow to me. But maybe it's going to launch this month. Maybe it'll launch next month. I don't think it's going to be next month. It definitely seems like it's going to be this month. But yeah, I mean, it's been a long time coming, guys. I just can't wait for these things to finally launch so we can actually see what the inflows are going to look like. And in particular, I am, as I've mentioned before, most interested in seeing what the ETH outflows are going to look like. That is the big question right now. That is the only short-term bear case I could make for ETH when it comes to like the ETFs, because obviously people are basically making the assumption that, okay, well, because GBTC had 54% of their total AUM outflow once that was converted to an ETF, that means the ETH product is going to be the same, and that would equate to, I think, around $5 billion of worth of outflows from ETH. Now, of course, this is a very naive assumption. This is not something that is based on anything but like, I guess like one data point. So, and we only really have that to go off, mind you. But at the same time, I've gone through the reasons before why I think that the outflows aren't going to be that much. And also, Grayscale can surprise by making the fee a lot lower than what it is now, or they can waive the fee for a period of time. I think maybe more likely they waive the fee than lower it like substantially. I think it was maybe Greystroke in the Daily Gwei Discord channel made a good point that the GBTC ETF fee is still quite high, and they haven't lowered that since since the outflows have been going on. So it would be really kind of silly for them to lower the ETH ETF or ETH fee, I should say, to lower than that. And obviously they're relying on people going into their mini trust. They have the GBTC mini trust, and they're going to have the ETH mini trust, rather than giving up potentially, lots of money by lowering the fees here, because there is I guess, absolute fee math you can do here, where essentially you say, okay, well, if Grayscale lost 50% of its AUM, but it's making 1.5% fees on the remaining 50%, well, that's still a lot more than if they were to keep all of their AUM and lower their fees down to 0.2%, right? Because they're lowering their fees substantially more than 50%, and they're giving up fees because of it. Now, it seems like the outflows have mostly stopped, so there seems to be a lot of, I guess, like, I don't know if I'd call it dumb money, but like money that is insensitive to the fees in GBTC right now. But I think over time that'll probably still bleed out, and a lot of the money will go into the mini trust and other ETFs. But we'll have to see how that plays out there. And there's no updates with regards to what the fees look like for any of the other issuers right now for the ETH ETFs. Definitely not Grayscale for ETH. Just most curious to see what they do there. I could see them waiving the fees for a little bit, but lowering the fees lower than their GBTC product wouldn't really make much sense to me, unless there's some other kind of wider strategy there. But yeah, it doesn't seem like that would happen there. But anyway, that's it on the ETH ETF front. Now, I wanted to kick off a discussion around a tweet that I put out, I think this was yesterday, where I said, it may seem boring to us crypto natives, but the main narrative that people will be fed when it comes to Ethereum is that it's a platform for tokenization. With BlackRock going all in on tokenization, people will want to get exposure to this, and they'll do it with the ETH ETFs. So I've talked about this before on the refuel, but essentially, as I said, like this is probably table stakes for us crypto natives and super boring. I mean, we've known about tokens for forever. Like tokens came to Ethereum, I believe, in 2015 or 2016. Then obviously we had an explosion of them via the ICOs, and since then tokens have been the main game in town, right? Everyone loves creating tokens. People love speculating on them, and there are potentially millions of these things that have been created over the years now. So obviously nothing special for us. But when it comes to outside of crypto and when it comes to what people are listening to and what people are monitoring, people, especially, I guess, every type of investor, I can't think of any investor that wouldn't want to get exposure to this. They're always looking for, I think, like something that is innovative, something that is, tech related. Like even if you're investing in silver or gold, for example, as precious metals, you're going to try and rationalize that investment, especially when it comes to something like silver, by saying, okay, well, silver's used in computer parts or silver's used in this part of manufacturing. And okay, well, if silver gets used here, or if this commodity gets used here because of some new innovation in technology, that means this commodity is going to be in more demand and the price is going to go up, so on and so forth. So I think people are always looking for ways to invest in innovation generally. And when you have the world's largest CEO of the world's largest asset manager go on to these mainstream publications and say the future is tokenization, we're going to bring we're going to update the existing financial system for the digital age, and we're going to do it properly instead of all these band-aids that we have. Things are going to be much faster, settlement is going to be much faster, global payments, global this, global 24/7 stock trading, so on and so forth. You're going to naturally think to yourself, oh, well, this all sounds pretty exciting. Like, how do I get exposure to this? And there's really going to only be two ways to get exposure to it directly, via BTC ETF or the ETH ETF. But I don't think you're getting exposure to it with the BTC ETF because BTC and Bitcoin doesn't really do what Ethereum does. There is some limited stuff going on with ordinals and runes, but it's completely different to what Ethereum does. And the tokenization stuff is definitely going to be built on Ethereum, as it has been for the past few years. So as an investor, you're definitely going, in these ETFs especially, you're definitely going to be sent marketing materials related to this. Like I can imagine BlackRock and other issuers, other ETF issuers sending out these prospectus where they basically say, we have this ETH ETF, here's what Ethereum is, here's what ETH is, and here's what we believe, the future is tokenization, here's why Ethereum is at the forefront of this, and this is how ETH plays into that, so on and so forth. So I can see that happening, but it's not going to be an overnight thing. I think that's a big thing with cryptos, where there's always a timeline mismatch here, where people think that these things, because we know about them today, they're going to happen tomorrow. And I've discussed this at length on the refuel, so I don't want to rehash my arguments again, but there's always a timeline mismatch. And especially when it comes to the TradFi related stuff, there is a huge mismatch here. And I think the ETF guys, or the issuers that have, so the companies that have issued ETFs have been trying to beat this jump for a while now. And like even the analysts have basically said the same thing. Crypto has traditionally operated on a very fast day-to-day kind of news cycle where everything needs to happen now. It's like the TikTok generation kind of thing, right? Where it's like very, very fast stuff happens, dopamine hit right now, no delayed gratification, no, a lot of short-term planning versus long-term planning, short-term speculation versus long-term speculation. But the ETFs aren't like that. TradFi is not like that for the most part. It is a long-term thing. It is a slow burn, right? It is a very kind of, I guess, passive thing where essentially the ETFs are going to take in tens of billions, hundreds of billions, potentially trillions of dollars, but that's going to take decades to, I wouldn't put it past it taking decades to reach trillions of AUM, like even just 1 decade. I mean, 10 years from now across just, ETH and BTC. Who knows what other ETFs will be around in 10 years for crypto? I'm sure we'll have a lot of them, but ETH and BTC alone, right? It might take a decade for us to reach that, trillions dollar mark there, or maybe shorter than that. But my point is that it's not a sprint; it's a marathon. It is something of a huge timeline mismatch between crypto natives and the TradFi world here, and that definitely bleeds into these sorts of things like tokenization, like general adoption of things. Everyone's like, oh, we've been, building in crypto for the better part of 10 years now in terms of building out products that smart contracts and apps like DeFi and decentralized exchanges, all that sorts of stuff. People are asking, where's the use case? And it's like, well, guys, like these things have been growing steadily for years now, and the biggest product market fit in crypto is stablecoins, and I believe that everything flows from stablecoins. I actually mentioned this in the Daily Gwei Discord channel today, where I said that stablecoins are the key to mass adoption. And yes, okay, they're not true crypto. They're not like decentralized. They're very centralized. They're potentially even worse than fiat in a bank account in terms of, I guess, guarantees around security. Maybe not so much security, but like custody, or essentially getting your funds frozen, things like that, right? Like, I get those concerns there, but they are the I guess, a gateway drug here, where essentially everyone does payments, right? Everyone sends money to people. So that's why stablecoins have seen such a huge uptick, not to mention the utility they bring by just being a relatively stable asset in an ecosystem where everything is relatively unstable, right? So that is the front door there. And then from there, everything just follows off of that. And that, I think, has been growing steadily over time. Stablecoin dominance has only gone up over time in terms of, stablecoin market cap, I should say, has only gone up over time, which flows on to the rest of the ecosystem. And I think that people need to kind of zoom out a bit sometimes, or a lot of the time in crypto, and realize that these things are happening. They're just not happening day to day. It's not like you're going to get, 100x adoption overnight. I think the mismatch comes from the fact that you could buy a token, like a meme coin, for example, and it can go like 10, 100x in a couple of days, whereas actual adoption of the actual tech takes a lot longer than this. You're not going to get, one day have 100 users, and then the next day you're going to 100x your user base, and they're going to stay. Like, you might 100x your user base in terms of people farming farming via addresses, but in terms of long-term sustainable users here, you're not going to 100x that overnight. That's a years-long thing, right? And I think that that's a good thing because it leads to more sustainable adoption, but it is something of a mismatch within the crypto natives versus, I guess, the wider ecosystem here. All right, so moving on, a EthStaker 2024 staking survey report has been published. So they've tweeted out some highlights from this report. So 32% of the respondents were Genesis stakers, 74% do not work in crypto, which is very, very interesting to me. I didn't think it was that high. And 62% indicated that they have no plans to exit staking. Now, of course, this is a solo staker survey here, I believe. But coupled with, I guess, like general staking and what this actually looks like. You can see here, do you run a validator hardware at home? Most of the respondents were home stakers, but there is a bit of liquid staking in here. SaaS customer, something like a Coinbase or a Binance or something else there. But this is very comprehensive. I highly recommend giving the whole kind of blog post a read here. But I read it just before, and there are a couple of things I wanted to kind of point out. I should have highlighted this before I got on the refuel, because I'm here like scrolling through trying to find what I wanted to point out. There was something very interesting, and I don't know where it was. Maybe it was towards the end of the report here. I'm sorry. I'm just bringing it up here. Bear with me for a sec here. Yeah, the demographic side of things. That's what I wanted to quickly shout out first. So it's not surprising, but 95% of the respondents self-reported as male. As I said, not surprising considering that if you go to any crypto event, you can kind of see the imbalance for yourself in terms of gender imbalance. Like, it's majority males, and this is not dissimilar to, I guess, the rest of tech generally, and finance as well. It's like they're very male kind of dominated fields here, but I honestly didn't think it was that high. Like obviously this is self-reporting. This is not something that we've KYC'd. There's no we don't know for sure if this is true or not. But I can't think of any reason why someone would want to report themselves as male if they weren't. Unless they were trying to purposely muddy the waters here. But as far as I know, this survey was definitely pruned for all of that and checked and cross-referenced. So yeah, that's quite high. I didn't think it was that high, but as I said, it makes sense in the general trend of things there. And 90% identified as somewhat or strongly technical. I guess that makes sense because you do have to be somewhat or strongly technical in order to be a solo staker. I would say that you don't have to be strongly technical, but somewhat definitely. I don't think that you can't have no technical skills and become a solo staker, because even if you can follow the guides in order to set up your staking rig, which is relatively easy, you have to be able to troubleshoot it. And troubleshooting comes in many different flavors. There's not really a one-size-fits-all guide for troubleshooting, and I think that's where the somewhat technical comes into it. And as I said, 74% of respondents do not work in crypto, and 88% are staking from North America, Europe, or Australia. I was actually surprised to see Australia mentioned there because of the fact that obviously North America and Europe are the two biggest crypto hubs right now, or kind of concentration of crypto people right now. But Australia is not one that I think of when I think of crypto hubs. But at the same time, I think that Australia is definitely batting above the average when it comes to the amount of people in crypto or involved in crypto projects. It's just that we don't really get that much representation outside of things like this, or outside of people making jokes about Australia, such as like spiders killing you, or kangaroos, people riding kangaroos and things like that. So just the silly memes that you're all used to. But I thought that was quite funny there. But anyway, I want you guys to go read this report for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Huge kudos to EthStaker for putting this together. I was one of the respondents here. Happy to always help with these things, and I tried to get the word out when they did this survey. But this is going to be pretty much like the closest thing we have to a comprehensive survey of solo stakers, or of ETH stakers generally, with an emphasis on solo stakers obviously here. Which I think that we definitely need more of, because we want to know what the solo staking ecosystem looks like across the whole Ethereum network here, and also in the face of some people trying to say that solo staking is not sustainable and we shouldn't optimize for it anymore. I definitely think that is not the case. I think solo stakers are the beating heart of Ethereum. I'm very proud to be one, and I will continue to be one until the day I die, pretty much. I plan to not shut down my validators until then. Even if I'm not earning any rewards, or earning very little rewards, I don't care. I love being a staker on the network, and I'm doing it in various different means. You guys know I've got rocket pool mini pools as well. But yeah, anyway, go give this report a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, staying on the topic of staking, Obol has released Charon v1 after 3 years of development, testing, and mainnet adoption. This transitions distributed validators from an early technology to one ready to be the standard for all Ethereum validators. Now, you guys know all about Obol and DVT generally. I've spoken at length about this, and you guys know I was part of the first mainnet cluster of Obol on the Ethereum mainnet here. I was using the Charon client software. Even though I was basically an alpha tester, the software was pretty good. I mean, there were some things I had to troubleshoot, but it was pretty good even in alpha state. And now that it is basically available in a 1.0 production release fashion, anyone can get started with this today if you would like. I mean, Obol has been alive on mainnet for a little while now, but the fact that this is a 1.0 release is obviously a huge milestone. So huge kudos to the Obol team. It's funny. You guys know most of you should know by this point that I'm an angel investor in Obol, but I invested in them quite a while ago. They were one of my first angel investments, actually, and I remember talking to them at the time and being like, okay, I understand what you guys are building, but we're so early in the Ethereum staking game. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I really want to back you guys, and I really want to see you guys bring this to mainnet. And over the years, they've just continued to execute on this. They've continued to bring innovative features to the staking ecosystem, and they do truly understand what makes staking unique on Ethereum, in that solo staking, squad staking, being able to run your own validators and your own full nodes on your own hardware. That is the beating heart of Ethereum here. So they've been really hard at work at this for quite a while now, and I'm just very, very humbled to be able to be a small part of it as an investor, but also as someone who has basically been as part of a mainnet DVT cluster for quite a while now. But you can go give the full blog post here a read. I'll link in the YouTube description below, but just wanted to give a huge kudos out to Obol again for getting this out there. All right, so as you guys know, there has been a lot of discussion over the last few months around Ethereum's issuance curve and potentially lowering it for various different reasons. Now, I'm not going to rehash the debate that has been raging on for the last few months about this. I just wanted to bring it up today because Caspar, one of the people that has been researching this, has introduced a website called Issuance.wtf. Now, on this website, you can go and find pretty much everything that you need in order to get familiar with what the research is looking at, what the current state of thinking is, and a bunch of supporting research over the years as well, in the form of like research posts, blog posts, talks, podcasts, papers, so on and so forth. So this is your one-stop shop for everything Ethereum issuance policy, specifically with regards to the things that have been spoken about over the last few months here. So definitely go check this out for yourself. This is going to take you a while to get through if you wanted to get through all of it. But if you want to be as up to speed as possible on essentially the thinking around Ethereum's issuance policy, this is definitely something you should go check out. So I'll link it in the description below for you to do so. All right, ZKSync has announced today something called the Elastic Chain, which is an ever-expanding network of ZK rollups secured by math and natively interoperable under a uniform, intuitive UX. AKA, this is ZKSync's version of a super chain. So, as you guys know, pretty much every L2 ecosystem is trying to do a super chain right now. Optimism has it, Polygon's doing it, Arbitrum's doing it with their Orbit stuff, Polygon with the CDK, and now ZKSync unveiled today the Elastic Chain, which is their way of doing it here. Now, as I've said in the past, I still strongly believe that the L2 ecosystem long term is going to look like a bunch of these super chains interoperating with each other. I think that they're all eventually going to be ZK. I don't really think optimistic rollups are going to survive long term. I think that the existing optimistic rollups will become ZK rollups, but I meant the actual like fraud proving architecture. It seems like, well, at least I believe that over the long term, the next few years even, a lot of these things are just going to become ZK because ZK just has a distinct advantage over optimistic rollups here, or over optimistic rollup technology generally. Now, you can go give this, I guess, like announcement a read for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I wanted to focus on one thing from this tweet thread here, which was like a chart that got, well, I guess like a little table that got all of crypto Twitter talking today, and not for the right reasons. So I hate these tables, guys. First and foremost, these comparison tables between different projects that make the project that is tweeting it or the project that is talking about it look best and their competitors look worse. Because usually, basically 99% of the time, these things are not accurate at all. And this is no exception. So the reason why I wanted to call this out is because there are a few things wrong here. One, the throughput TPS measurement makes absolutely no sense. Like, I don't even know why this is even in here. Like, the ag layer, for example, is not something that gives you TPS. Like, it is a layer for assets to live on, a unified liquidity layer. It's not trying to be a chain that does millions of TPS or whatever else, right? It's not that at all. And I think the same is true for the Optimism superchain here, measuring getting TPS. It just doesn't really make much sense. The other things are verifiability. I don't know why they've got no here for verifiability on the superchain, where essentially you can verify Optimism chains right now, and you will be able to even easier in the future. They've got fraud proofs live, but also you can run the full node today. I mean, you've seen the Ethereum on ARM Twitter account tweet about this before. So those are just like two glaring things. In terms of shared interoperability, I believe the superchain has that, even though they have NA here. Native interoperability, I believe, is not going to be 1 week. I believe it's going to be shorter than that on the superchain as well. So just generally, I don't like this table. And as I said, like, I don't like these tables at all because they're usually not accurate, and it does everyone a disservice here. So I don't know what, like, the goal of this was besides making the superchain and the ag layer look inferior to the elastic chain, but generally not a huge fan of that. But anyway, that's just a little thing I wanted to nitpick there. What I do think is cool is the fact that ZKSync is doing a superchain, because I think that if you want to survive long term and be one of the biggest L2s, you have to do a superchain. Like, there's no other way about it, because it's a network effect game. If you don't do it, right, and the chains that otherwise would have built in your ecosystem go build in another ecosystem, then that is you losing out on a network effect. So for example, if you're a builder and you want to spin up your own rollup, but you don't want to build it yourself, you want to use the existing stacks out there. Well, now you have Arbitrum Orbit stack, you have Polygon CDK, you have the OP stack, and you have the Elastic Chain stack from ZKSync here. So out of those four, and I believe there'll be others in the future, you make a choice of where you want to basically deploy, and that will depend on a bunch of different factors. But can you imagine, for example, if ZKSync didn't have this? Well, then they wouldn't even be in the equation. They would lose out to the other three because the project wouldn't even consider them. So that's why I think that the bigger L2s out there will go down this path for the most part here and become part of the superchain, or do their own superchain, just for the fact that they're trying to gather a network effect. Now, will this work for all of the L2s? No, it won't. And I'm going to bring up L2Beat here just to give you a list of projects that I think this is actually going to work for. It's going to work for Arbitrum. I think it's going to work for OP Stack. And I think Polygon's gotten a lot of traction here. with chains out there, but their main chain right now, the Polygon POS chain, isn't a L2 yet. It is still a side chain. So I think until they do that, it's a bit 50-50 right now. ZKSync, I don't know what it's going to look like. They are a top 5 L2 with ZKSync era. They do have a lot of attention. They do have a lot of good marketing and BD chops. So probably they can do something there. But if you look at the other standalone L2s here, like, I don't know if Linnea's doing a super chain, Mantle, Scroll. I don't know if Starkware's doing one. And then I'm just going down the list here of independent ones. Tyco is something different. They're doing a based roll-up. So they're definitely filling a different niche here. Immutable is built on Polygon's technology. Astar is Polygon's technology, right? So if you actually go through the list, there are only a few independent L2s left that aren't doing their own superchain thing, and some of them more successful than others, but like, are they going to be forced into doing it because of the network effect game? Like, I really think so, because if we're going to be live in a world where everyone wants to spin up their own roll-up as like an app chain, then you're not going to get those developers deploying their app on your chain, on your L2, or if they do that, they're not going to be paying much attention to it versus their own chain. So I think that the natural consequence over time will be that the super chains win out over the smaller ones here. And there will be some, I think, niche chains that kind of get traction that aren't part of a super chain, but they may just join one, because it's very similar to how countries have trade agreements with each other, right? Like, and have better trade agreements with some countries versus other ones. Like, for example, if you want to have a free trade agreement with low tariffs and really easy trade between two countries, you could consider that to be akin to a chain joining like the OP super chain, for example. Whereas if you have more restrictive trading policies between chains, it would be like two super chains trying to communicate with each other, right? So, and you know, I guess like it's more expensive to communicate, takes longer to trade, sort of things like that as well. So there are some loose analogies at play here, but that's generally how I see it there. But anyway, you can go give ZKSync's announcement a read for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so staying on the L2 topic here. So there's been a lot of, I guess, talk over the last maybe couple of years about L2s becoming L1s once they become very successful. Now, I understand if you're coming at this from, I guess, like a noob perspective, where you may not understand why an L2 is an L2, and you may just look at it as another chain and be like, okay, well, why wouldn't this thing just become an L1 if they're super successful? Why keep, I guess, like they call it paying rent to Ethereum L1, so on and so forth. So the answer may be obvious to people that have listened to the refill for years now, because what I'm going to say is not going to be news to you guys. But there was a tweet that was put up by Yilong today, who is one of the people building MiCA, which is a super trying to be a super scalable EVM rollup on Ethereum here, where he was quote tweeting someone saying that, you know, MiCA could be launched as an L1 instead of an L2, and they'd be better off doing that. And Yilong says, no, well, this is wrong. Many of the MiCA technologies for scaling L2s don't apply to L1. The only reason we can implement such aggressive optimizations is that we can leverage the base layers, Ethereum and EigenDA, for security and censorship resistance. If you're looking to build a high-performance L1, study Solana, Aptos, or Monad. The design space for high-performance L1s and L2s are just very different, so no, MiCA is never going to be an L1. It just doesn't make any sense. This is what I've been banging on for years, guys, is that being an L1 is inferior to being an L2 if your goal is scalability, if your goal is performance, if your goal is making sure that you have reliability by settling down to something like Ethereum, like a global settlement layer, very secure L1. And a lot of the innovations, as Yilong says here, especially around ZK, are being done at L2 and are not possible to be done as an L1. Like, you have to, as an L1, the number one thing, at least I think it's the number one thing, I may be wrong here, but the number one thing you have to actually consider is the fact that you have to come to consensus on things. So you're limited by that. You're limited by the fact that you have to come to consensus with a ideally globally distributed validator set that is economically secured, not to attack, economically incentivized, not to attack the chain, right? And also to stay online and keep the chain up. That's extremely difficult. That is not an easy task at all. And you're also paying for that out of token rewards too, right? Like as a network, you're paying out token rewards to do this. Whereas with an L2, You don't have to worry about this at all. All you're doing is posting down your data and proofs to Ethereum L1, or you're posting your data elsewhere and posting your proof down to L1, and suddenly you are an L2. You have your bridge, you're deployed on Ethereum mainnet, people can bridge in and out to your L2, and there you go. You're done. You don't have to worry about coming to consensus on things. You don't have to worry about spinning up a widely distributed validator set. You obviously do have to worry about some other things, like making sure that anyone can run a sequencer so that you get better censorship resistance guarantees from there. But when you don't have to worry about coming to consensus on something, when you don't have to worry about the distributed computing problems, you can just focus on making the most performant, most scalable chain that's ever been conceived, really. And that's why I think that L2, specifically rollups, are going to be the most scalable chains out there. And they are not there yet, of course, but they're going to get there, definitely. So I'm glad that Yilong put this out here, because that pervasive narrative that L2s, once they get big enough, are going to become L1s is wrong on so many different reasons, but especially the technical reasons. I'm not even talking about like the incentive reasons of, well, why would you give up your entire network effect? Like, yeah, okay, maybe you've been able to develop your own network effect, but the thing is that a lot of those people came to your chain because you're an L2, not because you're an L1, because they feel more secure on an L2 versus an L1. I know for a fact I would immediately remove all of my assets from any chain that decided to migrate from becoming an L2 to an L1. I would not trust that at all. And the fact that they even would do that would basically just be a huge betrayal of, I guess, trust for the ecosystem as well, for their community as well. So I just don't see that happening. I understand if you're coming at this from a noob perspective and you don't really know what you're talking about, it can seem logical that once an L2 gets big enough, it becomes an L1. It's kind of like when you say, oh, well, if a country gets big enough, it becomes independent. Like, for example, all the British colonies basically saying, well, screw you, royal family, we're going to become independent. That's not the same thing as this, right? That's not the same thing as this at all. It'd be like, you know what it'd be like? It'd be like a skyscraper in a city saying to the city, "Hey, we want to become independent of you because we make so much money in this, in this building. We don't want to be part of your country anymore. We don't want to be part of your city anymore. And we're just going to do that." Well, okay, but how are you going to do that? You can't move the building, so you're still in the city, and now all of a sudden you have all of the other costs associated with running a building that you have to pay out of your own pocket. You now don't have the protection, the guarantees of the laws of the city that you're in and the country that you're in. Like, it just all breaks apart, right? So that would be the better analogy here, not the analogy of a country, breaks apart from another country and no longer a colony breaks apart, is no longer a colony, becomes its own country, has its own rules and regulations. Sure, go and do that. It's historically extremely difficult, but also it's not the analogy that is, I guess, useful here when comparing L2s and L1s. All right, moving on from that, just to some news from Circle. So you guys know that there has been a regulation called MiCA running through the EU, and I think it was put into force a few months ago. Now, Circle announced that they are the first global stablecoin issuer to achieve MiCA compliance here for the USDC and EURC or EURC stablecoins. So kudos to them, congrats on that. But I'm going to put on my bear hat for a little bit here and say that I don't like this trend, because what this is, guys, this is regulatory capture. So, yeah, okay, USDC has this, but will Tether have this? Will USDT have this? BUSD doesn't exist anymore, but will it have had this? Will other stablecoins have this? I'm not convinced they will, because once you have this, once you have regulatory approval, and once you have that advantage over your competition, why would you want your competition to be able to have that as well? So what you do is you start engaging in regulatory capture. You start greasing the wheels of the right people, right? And this is not something that Circle hasn't done in the past. I'm not accusing them of doing this or anything like that, but they have been in court before arguing that, Tether is basically a complete fraud, is going to collapse at any moment. Like, I'm paraphrasing here. They didn't say these exact things, but they were basically in court fighting Tether, essentially, right? And obviously to their own benefit here. So as much as I love USDC as a stablecoin, I love the fact that it exists. I love that people can use it and people can get value out of it. I don't love regulatory capture. I don't love winners and losers being chosen by government protection or regulatory protection. So I really hope that other stablecoin issuers can get this MiCA compliance. I hope that USDT can, obviously, because it's the biggest one, but others as well. I hope that this regulation doesn't hinder these, I guess, like smaller stablecoins as well, the stablecoin startups, from being able to compete with the bigger guys, because that is traditionally what it's been in every industry, is that bigger players capture the regulatory environment and then squeeze out smaller players by doing that, by making it essentially illegal for them to compete, which is not great. But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I did see people celebrating this, but I thought there was a bit of a bear case to be made on that front there. All right, finishing up today's episode, I'm not going to spend too long on this, even though I could talk about this for hours. I put out another tweet today where I said, crypto is a cultural/social movement first and a technology movement second. This, I believe, is where the majority of disagreements arise from in this ecosystem. I'm in it for the tech, but I wouldn't be in it at all if I didn't vibe with the cultural/social movement. I haven't been, I guess, I haven't been hiding this from you guys at all. I haven't been quiet about this, but if I didn't vibe with Ethereum's culture and what it's trying to do and what it's trying to be from a social perspective, I wouldn't be in Ethereum. And if I wasn't in Ethereum, I wouldn't be in crypto. Because every other ecosystem that I look at, I don't vibe with the culture. Every other L1 ecosystem in particular, I don't vibe with the culture. I definitely do not vibe with Bitcoin culture at all. Like hardcore, libertarian, everything's a scam except Bitcoin. Like I don't vibe with that. I know there are other pockets of Bitcoin culture, but they begin to look a lot like copycats of Ethereum culture just with Bitcoin. So I kind of see that as redundant. And then you can go down the list of other ecosystems out there. I don't want to really call out any in particular, but I feel like it's worth calling them out just to illustrate my point. So I'll go down the list. Solana, obvious example, I don't vibe with that culture at all. It's a very, very different culture to Ethereum. A lot of it is obviously the DJing culture, but even outside of that, the culture of moving fast and breaking things, the culture of not respecting the fact that that the value of this industry is decentralization. And we should be able to run, full nodes at home on consumer hardware, stuff like that. Like, I don't want to FUD Solana or anything like that, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a different culture, and I don't vibe with that. And then you can go down the list, right? You got Cardano, definitely don't vibe with that culture. Avalanche, it's essentially a shitty copycat of Ethereum in my eyes, because they have an EVM chain on there. Their Supernets thing, or sorry, I should say their Subnets thing is vastly inferior to Layer 2s on Ethereum. So from that's the technical side, I just don't vibe with. And the cultural side, the Avalanche people, from what I've noticed on Twitter, have been incredibly toxic, like very, very toxic, and seem to not really care about anything but like shitting on other ecosystems, especially Ethereum, right? And then, I mean, there's a laundry list of these L1s. Polkadot's a funny one, because the most attention Polkadot has gotten in the last like few years has been this week, because I'm sure you saw on Twitter that there was a bunch of stuff that came out about how they're burning like $80 million every 6 months, and essentially spending all this money on advertising and spending all this money on shilling via influencers and stuff like that. So that was funny, but I don't even know what Polkadot culture is, to be honest. I think it might be closer to Ethereum culture, but at the same time, they seem to be too far on the let's wax philosophically about governance side. Like the last time I checked in, they were very down that rabbit hole, and I'm like, okay, that's cool and all, but they're philosophers are thinkers, they're not doers. Like a lot of the time, they're just thinking about things, which is valuable, but you have to have both if you're building out an ecosystem, right? So you have to have thinkers and doers here. And then you can keep going down the list here, and I'm not gonna call out everything else, but yeah, generally I don't vibe with any of the other ecosystems out there. Don't vibe with the culture at all. Don't think I'd fit in that culture. But in Ethereum, I'm home, and I think a lot of that. I think that applies to a lot of you guys as well. But on that note, I'm gonna end this extra long episode today. Maybe I need to bring back the daily episodes instead of Monday, Wednesday, Friday cadence, because I'm going overtime. But anyway, enough of that. That is it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all on Friday. Thanks everyone.